Hey everyone, it's the Maxi here. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that's fundamental to all of our lives, which is money. We use it every single day, but have you ever really stopped to think about what it is and why certain things become money while others don't? What exactly is money? You might hear some people say that it's simply a shared belief, something we collectively agree upon has value, but there's still qualities that make one thing better money than another. So a piece of paper holds value because we as a society trust that others are going to accept it in exchange for goods and services. And while this shared belief plays a crucial role, it's not the whole story. So throughout history, certain things have risen to the top as effective forms of money. And it's not just random chance why this is happening. There's inherent qualities that make one thing a better form of money than another. What makes a good tool, right? It's something that's effective for its intended purpose and it's reliable and efficient. Money is just a tool for economic exchange. It has its own set of desirable properties. Different types of money have different advantages and disadvantages, and I'm going to look at that later on. Okay, so let's do a little thought experiment. What if we suddenly decided to use rocks as money? Rocks have a lot of issues if you try to use them as money, right? They're all different, so it would be pretty hard to standardize their value. And they're also abundant and they have zero scarcity, right? If I can just go pick one up, how is that? No one wants to exchange their time and energy for something that I can just pick up off the ground, right? What about tulips? Anybody that has spent some time in Bitcoin is familiar with the tulip mania in the Netherlands, which for a brief period, tulip bulbs were traded at incredibly inflated prices. And critics of Bitcoin love to compare Bitcoin to this speculative bubble of tulips. This comparison is dumb, and anyone who's saying this either hasn't put much research into Bitcoin, which is probably the majority of people that are saying this, or they're just not able to grasp the concepts around what makes Bitcoin the best money that we've ever created. So there's a very good reason why, for thousands of years across countless civilizations, humans have gravitated towards gold and silver as money. And it wasn't just because they looked pretty and people wanted to collect them. These metals possess inherent qualities that make them exceptionally suited for being money. And we'll get into these qualities soon. Okay, let's look at some historical examples of things that were used as money and why they eventually succeeded or failed. So we're going to look at African glass beads first. So in certain parts of Africa, these beads were used as money. People were willing to trade their time and energy for these beads because they were scarce at the time. The glassmaking technology. What I have here is a table of different types of money, right? And I rank them from 1 to 5 in each of these categories, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. So let's just go through it. Okay, so for durability, Bitcoin's going to get a 5. Okay, durability is just how well something stands the test of time, right? So Bitcoin, as long as you store it properly, it'll never be destroyed, no matter what happens. US dollars are going to get a 4 out of 5. If you hold them in cash, there's definitely the potential that you lose them, they burn up, they rot, whatever, right? Gold also gets a 5 here. Gold is a very stable metal. You really can't destroy gold. You can melt it down and mix it with other things, but you melt it back down and separate it, and it's going to be gold again. Tulips are going to get a 1. They're going to rot, and they're not going to be good anymore after pretty short amount of time. Portability, Bitcoin's going to get a 5 again here, right? As long as you can remember 12 words, you can go anywhere in the world with your Bitcoin and take it with you. So it's extremely portable. You can also send it anywhere in the world for a very small fee, right? US dollars are going to get a 4 here, just due to the system that we have. They move around very well. They're very portable, but there is situations that you run into if you're trying to send money to other countries, something like that. There can be very high fees for that. So I docked them a point for portability for US dollars. Gold is only going to get a 2. It's not very portable at all, right? If you want to move $1 billion of gold, that's going to be extremely difficult. There's going to be high costs to doing that. You're going to have to hire a security team, keep it safe. It's not very portable. Okay, tulips are going to get a 1 as well. Try paying for $1 billion of something worth of tulips, right? It's not feasible. Gold gets a better score because I guess $1 billion of it still is going to be easier to move around than tulips. Divisibility, Bitcoin's going to get a 5. Bitcoin is divisible into units of 100 million per 1 Bitcoin. So right now, the divisibility, Bitcoin's going to get a 5. It's divisible into units of 100 million per 1 Bitcoin. So there is 2.1 quadrillion units out there available. Divisibility is just how small of units something can break down into, right? So it's totally feasible to pay for something small with Bitcoin. You don't have to use a whole coin, right? You can just use a fraction, tiny, tiny fraction of a coin to pay for something. US dollars, they're also going to get a 5 here. It breaks down into 100 cents. There's not really anything that you need to pay for that's less than a cent, right? So US dollars also gets a 5. Gold is only going to get a 3 here, just because if you want to pay for something with gold, right? Say you wanted to buy a coffee with gold, to melt down or shave off the certain amount of gold that you would want to pay for that coffee with is pretty impractical, right? So for divisibility, I mean, it is divisible though, right? So you can do it. It's just not practical. Tulips are going to get a 1, right? If you try to pay for a coffee with tulips, how much of the tulip are you going to give? There's only 1 tulip. You can give 2 tulips, right? You can't just give a fraction of a tulip. They don't break down into smaller units. Okay, so for fungibility, this is fungibility, if you haven't heard about it, is basically 1 unit of it is indistinguishable from another, right? So 1 Bitcoin is the same as another Bitcoin, right? When a new block is mined and Bitcoin are released, those are the exact same thing as a Bitcoin mine from 2011, right? It doesn't matter. Same thing with US dollars. It's not like, oh, this $20 bill is less crumpled than this $20 bill, so that $20 bill that's less crumpled is worth more. No, they're all worth the same amount, right? Gold, I gave a 4 out of 5, just because there's purity issues sometimes, right? Like if it is pure gold, it's going to be a 5 out of 5, but there's some issues in terms of verifying that if I have a gold bar, is it all gold? Is it 100% pure gold, or did I try to mix in 5%, copper or some other similar metal that is gonna taint the purity of the gold? Tulips are gonna get 1. They're not all the same, right? A prettier tulip is gonna be worth more than another tulip that isn't as pretty, right? So they're not very fungible at all. Scarcity, I'm going to give Bitcoin a 5 here, right? There's only 21 million. There only ever will be 21 million. It's the first finite asset that we've ever had in the world. Okay, so that's going to get a 5 for sure. There's nothing else that comes close. So dollars are going to get a 1. People create them out of thin air and give them to themselves. When you go get a mortgage, the bank is allowed to just create money out of nothing, right? So dollars are not scarce at all. There's nothing to prevent them from being made. There's no system in place for that. So for gold, it's going to get a 4 out of 5 for scarcity. There is the natural law of how much mining power it takes to get gold. So it is pretty scarce. It's inflating at a rate of about 2% a year, which is pretty good. It's pretty good, but it's only going to get a 4 out of 5 because we actually don't even know how much gold is in the earth, right? We could just hit a vein of gold, and this isn't likely, right? But we could hit a vein of gold that's just massive tomorrow, and it doubles the supply of gold instantly, right? We don't know. Tulips are going to get a 1. They're not very scarce at all. Anyone can grow them. Anyone can grow them, right? So they're not scarce at all. Acceptability. So this is the first one that Bitcoin's not going to get a 5 on, right? Bitcoin's only going to get a 2 out of 5 here. Some people accept Bitcoin, but it is not widely accepted right now. Okay, so the thing is, though, is that can change, right? As Bitcoin becomes further adopted, as more people learn what it is, that score is going to increase, right? But right now, in the state that it's in, it's only going to get a 2. US dollars get a 5, right? Everyone knows what US dollars is. Everyone accepts US dollars. It's going to get a 5. Gold is only going to get a 3. If you try to pay for stuff with gold, there are things that you can pay for with gold. It's probably more accepted than Bitcoin worldwide, but generally, if you go try to pay for a coffee with gold, they're not going to accept that as payment. Tulips is going to be a 1. Nobody accepts tulips as a form of money, right? Verifiability. How hard is it to verify that it is what you say it is, right? With Bitcoin, it's going to get a 5 out of 5. The blockchain updates every 10 minutes. You can verify that the Bitcoin that you got sent is real Bitcoin. If it's included in the block, it's real Bitcoin, right? Whoever sent it to you sent you real Bitcoin. US dollars are going to get a 4. It's pretty easy to see that they're real, but there is the potential for counterfeiting and what you're given not being real. Gold is going to get a 3 out of 5. It is pretty hard to know whether the gold that someone's trying to give you is pure or if it's fake or diluted in some way, right? So it is verifiable, but it can be a process to do that. Tulips can get a 2 here. I guess they are verifiable that it's a tulip. If you look at it, you're able to tell it's a tulip. For resistance to seizure, Bitcoin's going to get a 5. Okay, so if you can properly protect your Bitcoin, the only way that someone can take it from you is if you voluntarily give it up. That's the only way, right? US dollars are only going to get a 2 here, and the only reason they get a 2 is because you're able to hold cash. Most people don't hold cash, and if you hold cash, then the only way people can get it is if they come and take it from you. But if you hold dollars in a bank account, which most people do, that bank can freeze your money at any point, right? If you do something that the government doesn't like, they can reach out to that bank and tell them to freeze your money. There's nothing you can do about it. Your money's gone, right? It's not really your money if it's sitting in a bank account. Gold will get a 3 here. And the reason for that is because if you're holding it, even if you're holding it and you're bearing the gold, right? You have it in a safe. It is still physically there. And if someone shows up, they can take it from you. Versus Bitcoin, they would have to make you give it up, right? They can't physically take it from you unless you voluntarily give it up. Versus gold, they could physically remove your gold even without your consent. So that's going to get a 3 there. And tulips will get a 1 as well. You can take someone's tulips. They're pretty hard to secure. If you wanted to secure 10,000 tulips, you'd need a massive safe. They're pretty easy to steal, right? So immunity to manipulation, Bitcoin's going to get a 5 here. You would have to reverse engineer the blockchain, which would take an enormous amount of hash power, right? It's not feasible to manipulate Bitcoin. I mean, it's never been done before, right? So as long as Bitcoin's never had a 51% attack, it can get a 5 for the immunity to manipulation, right? If you want to send a transaction, you can. Nobody can manipulate that. With dollars, it's going to get a 1. Again, people can print them at any point they want, right? It's easy to manipulate. I mean, and honestly, they tell us that they're doing it, right? The Fed dictates monetary policy, and they manipulate the flow of dollars, right? So it's not very immune to manipulation at all. Gold's going to get a 4. The only reason it doesn't get a 5 is because of the fact that you have to, or you don't have to, but a lot of people end up depositing their gold with a trusted third party, right? And if you're depositing your gold with a trusted third party, you're trusting that they are holding your gold for you. And that is not a guarantee, right? So there is the potential for manipulation. If they say they have your 10 tons of gold, but then they go loan out 8 tons of it and try to generate a yield on that, and you try to go get your gold back and it's not there, right? So there's the potential for manipulation there because a lot of people end up custodying their gold with a third party. Tulips are going to get a 1. Again, they're just not good money. Store value, Bitcoin gets a 5 here, right? It has constantly gone up in real terms. It has outpaced, everything has gone down in terms of Bitcoin. If you stored your wealth in Bitcoin, you maintained your wealth. That's just the reality in purchasing power for everything, right? Houses, food, groceries, everything's going down in Bitcoin terms. So as a store value, it's going to get a 5. Dollars are going to get a 1. They constantly lose their purchasing power, right? If you're trying to store value in dollars, you are going to just constantly lose your money. Okay, it's going to get a 1. Gold will also get a 5 here. And I wanted to give it a 4, but I gave it a 5 because it has maintained its purchasing power for, centuries, right? I mean, it goes back to thousands of years, how long gold has been able to keep its purchasing power, right? There's a saying, one ounce of gold buys one fine suit, and that maintains all the way throughout history, right? Tulips are going to get a 1. They bubbled up and crashed. If you decided to store your wealth in tulips, you would have lost all your wealth pretty fast. Volatility, this is a big one for a lot of people, right? Bitcoin's only going to get a 2 here because right now it's very volatile. This is another thing where as more people start using Bitcoin, as more people realize what it is and start storing their wealth in Bitcoin, this is going to go up higher and it's going to get a better score for volatility, right? Dollars are going to get a 5 here. They're very stable. They're just slowly leaking purchasing power. They're not going up and down and up and down, very volatile. They're just slowly leaking your economic energy and your store value. Gold's going to get a 4 here. It's also not extremely volatile. It kind of just goes up pretty steadily, right? It does have periods of volatility, but for the most part, it's pretty steady. Tulips are going to get a 1. They bubbled up and they crashed and they never came back. So, okay, for me, the evidence is compelling. Bitcoin embodies the core qualities of sound money better than anything that's come before. It's as close to perfect money as I think we can get. The only thing that it doesn't currently have is stability from volatility and acceptability to be widely accepted by merchants. But this is going to be fixed as more people learn how Bitcoin's valuable. And in short, I believe Bitcoin's the best money we've ever had. And I think you'd be wise to consider including it in your financial strategy. Thanks for watching. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed and you'd like to hear more about Bitcoin in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.